Hey, Dr. Contrast Live here. I hope all is well with everybody. I just thought we get a chance to start this stream today. But before I begin, I just want to take a moment here to thank all of you who were involved in the streaming process this past Wednesday. We did a little study on an F-35 coming off the flight deck of the aircraft carrier, and really pleased to see a lot of individuals coming in and take advantage of looking at that stream, so to speak. And hey, good afternoon, OED. How are you? Good to have you on board here. I just want to take a moment here to go back to last Wednesday's stream, operator, and thank everybody for being on board here on Wednesday. That was a lot of fun and a neat program to work with. But again, so appreciative of all the individuals who joined forces with us. I hope you're all right, operator. Everything good today for you so far? So good. Let's hope that's the case. But I thought today, as a result of going through the full cycle on Wednesday with that aircraft study, the F-35, we turn right around and take a look at something that's pretty historic in terms of just old-fashioned basic sketch rendering skills here. And what I want to start with here is dedicate today's stream. No one is shooting at me, and I'm that's a good point. Let's call it a win. You're absolutely right there, operator. Super. So today I want to just go back and kind of slow down the pace a little bit, and not so much media or technique, but just good old-fashioned what's in a good sketch and how you create an idea and so forth. And I started with, to get it started with here, today's subject matter is the CTS shooting brake. In other words, there's a lot of conversation out there about shooting brake systems, what they are, how they got their name, what the character or the flavor is. And it's really interesting because if you look at the history of how we got the term in the automobile industry of shooting brake, it all began in England back in 1890s, and the lord of the manor and individuals of great wealth that had hunting clubs, what they did was they had a horse-drawn carriage that was used to transport hunters, and the carriage, for example, or the wagon, transported the hunters, the shooting gear, ammunition, room for game, etc. And that's how that name came about, the shooting brake. And also, the name brake came about because it was interesting that that wagon series, or that whole operation back in those days in the 1890s, when it all started in England, that brake came about from the fact that that wagon was used to break in the horses for the manor of the farm and the clubs and so forth around the entire country of England. So that's the origin of shooting brake. But also in today's vernacular, it's still called or referred to as a shooting brake, but also known as an arrow wagon. Very interesting concept altogether. So I'm going to take a look at some just really good, fast, rapid sketches here on arrow wagons or shooting brake systems. And I started out with this very interesting little concept here, and this is called an empathy sketch. And I just laid that out as far as a theme study to get started with this whole program today. And if you notice, there are three things happening in a sketch that I'm going to really work with and utilize to develop some of these concepts in the shooting brake studies we're going to go into in just a few moments here. Number one, notice there's a big, large bustle back here. This comes back from example, this whole area back and through here really made its fame and claim back in the 1940s with Gurney Nutting. It's called the bustle back Rolls Royce. So there's a lot of bustle back on the trunk system. And so I kind of picked up on that in this little empathy sketch, by the way, which is just purely emotional study, nothing preconceived. Just looking at a system with thicks and thins and line weight changes to kind of give me a theme to work on for this shooting brake study here we're going to go through today. So number one, the bustle back series, that trunk system. Number two, a very sharp brake in the rear quarter area here. That line brake right there was really interesting to me. This upper piece, we'll show you in a moment how we developed that. And lastly, pulling a page out of Rolls Royce book, for example, in a Bentley, notice the front end overhang or the shingle effect that this whole front cap has in this very sheer fender. There's a lot of Cadillac in this, and I think that's what we're going to really stress on here, looking at maybe the CTS series of Cadillac touring sedans as a shooting brake to kind of develop the sketches. So based on those little themes, and then lastly down the rocker panel, this very sharp series of lines are to kind of break the sill areas down here in the lower piece itself. So let me just get one more commentary about this whole empathy sketch. Notice this upper collapses very quickly, and the trick is to take that line and just kind of swing it open a little bit and open it up just a bit and then bring it back to a pillar system. So we're going to look at that. So from that translation that I started out as a very quick little empathy sketch, about maybe a 2-second strike, what opened up the door was this. I translated by doing this. All of a sudden, begin to take some of those basic themes here, gang, and look at what happens here when you take, for example, this upper and begin to stretch it. There it is here, but just open it up a little bit like we did earlier. We open that up and get that upper to kind of walk through. Again, this whole front end, this shingle series, for example, the front end graphics, pull that forward and then add that detail, that very stiff front corner fender here. And last but not least, taking the whole bustle back system that was developed back with the Rolls-Royce era into that whole upper. Here's the upper being stretched into the back area, into that bustle back. So this will be part of the trunk series, or the tail section of this shooting brake or aero wagon that we're going to develop here today. So from that premise, that was the basic scheme. And all I did was just took this basic sketch and just dropped in the wheels and laid in a footprint and just dropped it down and got an elevation study for us. So we're going to spend some time doing the same thing. We're going to take this thing and now begin to open up some sketches here. So let's kind of take that same thing and begin to develop some really good, quick, very fast strikes. Let's get a ground line down here. Just going to lay that in very lightly. Let's get that set. Let's lay that through the page. Then come back in and lay the wheel plants in. Get that down, count them back. Get the rear section area here. Pardon me as I come back into this thing. And there's the wheel setup here. Let's come back and just get that front strike line in here. Let's do this real nice and lightly. Just get the theme down. Stretch right through the shape. There it is. Bring that on through. Then just get that rocker panel kind of roll in there. Just a nice simple body shape right through. Very fluid. Notice I'm drawing right through the shape itself. I'm not concerned about the wheel graphics here. I'm going to get the theme down here. Let's just kind of back and get the upper end. Let's kind of pull the pillar in place. Pull that through. Take that right back. And get a little bit of that return in this thing. But again, the mystery here is to get that little bustle back to work. So let's kind of roll that in. And let's roll this back. And there we are. Let's take that line right through here. Roll that back. A little bit of relief in this thing. Let's take this door cut line. Bring that little piece in place here. Let's put the pillar in place. And again, let's take that right through to that little connection line right there and drop that back into that bustle back area here. So there you are, underneath the rocker, back into the sill again. And right through it, and then the absolute design line, the brake itself, glass, B pillar, and then the C pillar. Let's take that snout right through the thing and get a little bit of that front end, that shingle piece to kind of work for us. So there's a theme sketch, very quickly right there. Let's put a little weight in this thing now. Run that through, run that through. Get this guy to kind of a little bit of a recess in there, little door pull. A little bit of a break down the rocker line, maybe a little bit of a razor on it like this, and back into that sill area, run that right through, and just kind of plant the wheels in here. There's a little bit of backside wheel itself, a little bit of backside wheel itself. There it is there, and through. Let's kind of sharpen up the ground line. Just looking at elevations here, based on that whole concept right there, or what that shooting brake is telling us to do right there. My imagination is already running well. Hey, that's great. So far, making sense so far, operator? Good, good, good. All right. Again, a little shingle. There it is, all the way through into the A pillar, B pillar, and back into the shooting back area itself. Let's just kind of do this too. Let's kind of break this thing up and take that line right through into the quarter section and roll that back. Do the following with it. Now let's do this. Nothing really fancy. I just want to do some real good, real quick pencil sketches with a lot of emotion. Just run that right through. Notice I'm going right through the entire form. A little bit of scribble back and through to get that backside line to work in. A little more depth in the shape itself. Just really easy. A little more ground line base. Kind of shuttle, just to settle this vehicle in a little bit. Put the wheels in place. Center. Run that through into the center. And there it is there. Now let's just kind of take this in, just kind of break it out here. Just a little study. Nothing fancy, just enough there to just kind of put some weight in this thing. A little bit of character in those guys. That thing here, let's run that through. And again, and just for what it's worth, a little bit of color added here. This is where the graphics might be for the lamping system, just out for that rear quarter area. That's where that real sharp, severe line comes in here. Hey, how you doing, Chip? Good to see you. How's everything? Thanks very much for joining us on board here again. I'm just going through a real quick recap here, Chip. We started out the program by doing this. Did a little bit of empathy study here on some shooting brake studies for this shooting brake series that we're going to do today. Just in basic sketch form. Put an empathy sketch together and start. Give me a theme to work with here, so to speak. And I picked up 3 element things in this. I just mentioned the operator. 3 things in this strike that were really important to develop this whole background thing. Now I'll give you a little bit of history in a moment as to why they're called shooting brakes. So the first thing I noticed was right back into this old Rolls-Royce bustle back trunk system. Kind of neat. Using that as a theme perhaps to get some of this lines back in through here. Then this whole spear line here, I just took that whole upper and rotated it up a little bit, gave me the upper line to work with. And the shingle effect up front, going back to what the Rolls-Royce gangs, what they were doing back in the 30s and 40s. and a very sheer front end in this thing. So from that strike there, I went into this and just translated that study by doing the following here. Again, here's the bustle back there, just lifting the line. There's that strong design line, but bringing it up and into the upper, and getting this whole front end system to kind of shingle into this operation. So that's how I started. Then we got back in here and took the same basic principle and just started developing some theme sketches here. Just nice black and white studies. Nothing quick. Just going to go back and just lay in some graphics here. This is, we're going to shape that same series of form studies here. And there it is. Into the pillar, run it through, into the rocker panel itself, into the wheels, just real loose. Just getting a character down. Right line here. Running that through, and that shingle, run that right into the rocker series. Now that just comes right through, gives you a little bit more, maybe a little bit of intake piece here, whatever it might do. That runs through here, and just putting a good old-fashioned bone line through this, and just enough scribble to give it some character here. Just kind of ink in the wheels just a bit more. So there's a posture. Again, on the shooting brakes, there's high bone line. Let's pick up that line and just run it right through. Let's do that. It kind of comes right through and into that whole bustle back area here. Into the pillar, and then that real tail end section. There it is there. So there's a theme off of that sketch. Just kind of laying one in there very quickly to get that guy operating here. Second look, let's do this. Let's come back in and just keep working on this elevations here. Just get a character down. And the wheels, lay those in. Let's lay those in. Come back in again, get that same basic theme. A lot of drive, front to rear. Take this in, run it through. There's that kickback. Into that shingle. Let's have a little more vertical. Take that through. It's going to bring this into play. Now let's take this right through. Let's run that right into that. Let's get that bustle back to work here. And there it is there. And this kick out and comes back in and does that. Let's get that pillar to work. But in this case, let's use a trick out of the old 40s, for example, where the windscreen, for example, oftentimes in the 30s and 40s had a visor. So let's kind of put a visor on this thing, see what it might look like. Go back to a little bit of retro stuff. Visor here, and take that right, and that's part of the pillar. How cool is that? Into the shooting brake, into the back end. A little strong design line, let's break it there. Now let's take that same basic theme and just drop it into the rocker. Let's put a little spear in this thing. Let's get the wheels kind of tidied up a little bit. Find their center. Looking for a theme. Shooting brake. Interesting concept. A little bit of tone in this guy. That's that. Into that pillar. Into the upper. A little bit more boldness in this guy. And really good and rapid little sketches here. Hopefully. Clean them up a little bit. Put the shingle in place. Get that front end to work a little bit for us. Run that through. A bit of wheel graphic. And the ground line. A little bit stronger line into this. Back to ground. Molder in that offset. There's another variation of the theme right there, guys. Just a real quick, simple, how to get a theme or expression down on some of these shapes we're dealing with here. So let's get a moment here, and we'll sharpen a second. At this stage, for your benefit, Chip, when I started the program here, the stream this afternoon, into the history of how this thing got to be called, that whole thing right there became a shooting brake. There's a little bit of a history behind that. It began back in the 1890s in England. The manors and the wealthy of that nation, for example, at that time had hunting clubs. And what they had was, for example, they had a horse-drawn wagon called a shooting brake. The reason it was called a shooting brake is because that wagon was used to transport the hunters with their game materials, for example, shooting gear, game, etc., and ammunition. They take them out to the fields to hunt and so forth, and that's how it got its name. However, the brake part of it the shooting brake portion of that came from the fact that that same wagon was used to brake in the horses on the manor, for example, when they were going through the systems. So back in the 1890s, that's how it got its name, the shooting brake. But in today's vernacular, it's still known as a shooting brake, but it's also can be designated as a narrow wagon. So I use that same theme here, for example, of getting into this whole process of getting into a camback or a shooting brake study, kind of a modified aero wagon. A lot of history has been established with Jaguar, Volvo, Aston Martin. They've all done shooting brakes of some sort, but that's the history of that thing. So today's program of stream is just dedicated to get some really neat sketches down on just a very simple black and white studies here. I'm looking for a theme. So there's 1 and 2, just kind of laying down some really quick little side views or elevation studies. Let's go back and get one more down here, and then we'll chance to switch gears. Just going to get that ground line down. Run that right through very quickly. Just looking for real fast theme sketches. Looking for good ideas. And just let's lay the wheels in. Let's lay those wheels in. Let's kind of take that same form. Let's kind of go back. There's the front end graphics. Let's take that right through the shape. Right through it. Into the upper. Again, let's kick this back just a bit here. I'm working sensor. There you go. Let's take this line in. Ooh, nice little accident right there. Look at that. Take that through. Let's get this front end to kind of dive off a little bit, kick it underneath. Bring it back up again, and kick this lower piece right in here. And just run that right through. Let's get that shingle to work again. Meaning that little Rolls Royce of that front end cap coming out of here. I'll show you that in just a moment here, what that's going to look like. Let's take that bustle back and just terminate that shape right there. Bring that on in. Bring that through. And there is another variation on that theme. Then let's get that pillar to work right there. Let's just kind of knock this in. There's glass. And a little bit of form study through the body itself. And just run that right through. Real simple. A little bit of tone in through here. With the wheels planted. Let's stop right there. Look at the gesture we're starting to get in these guys. Your accidents are better than most people's intent. Well, I think that's a good point, operator. I talk about accidents. Sometimes when you go through a rapid sketch such as this, and what I'm trying to demonstrate today here for your benefit is how to not be fearful of laying down ideas and be very empathic with it, very quick. Pick a theme and just run with it and just have a lot of fun. And that's the idea behind the whole process, because those accidents, this little spear line right here, it was not an initial sketch, but by being rapid and moving the pencil around, it gives you another theme to work with here. And all of a sudden, I've always said this before, and I'll say it again in the drawing process. Do not be afraid to make mistakes. That's where the miracles live. So I think that's what we're looking at right here, operator. So thank you. Let's put a little bit of graphics in this guy. So where the tail lamps are, just kind of wrap this thing over the top. Take that right on through. That's where the graphics are. Put a little bit of that flag line up in front here. Let's kind of put a little more beef in this one up on top here, just kind of where we are. There you are. A little bit of maybe a door entry piece. Let's just put that back in place there. So there's a real good theme in terms of getting a real what I refer to as a proportion to start to sing for you. Let's kind of lay in the graphics. Center line wheel. Hit the center line wheel. And again, notice I'm not putting a lot of detail in these sketches. Again, I'm looking for a theme, something that we can really live with here. Let's take that on through. A little bit more of this, a little bit of cut back in this guy, and this comes right back. There's that bustle we were talking about. That bustle back right there is being played up in almost every one of those themes. So we're using it as a real solid theme. Chefs will say something most helpless product. Yeah, they are. That's a good point too, Jeff. Thanks. Operator, what do you have? I hear you there. That's good advice. Personally, I'm still at the stage of picking up a pencil. No. Operator, believe me, pick up the pencil and just go. One of these streams, I think what I'm going to do, maybe next week, I'll bring in my sketchbook when I was about a 10 and 12-year-old. And they're going to begin to see why it's so critical to start and make a whole lot of mistakes. I still make a lot of mistakes. I'm very confident of that. not confident, but very aware of the fact that I still make mistakes. But they become a real help me. So let's carry on here just for a moment. Let's get this sketch squared away. Let's go back and just kind of ink this thing in. Really kind of put a lot of emotion in this guy. Gonna put a little bit of tone in this. Real rapid. Theme. Nothing cosmetic, nothing pretty yet. Let's kind of put a little bit of this into it. Let's put a little bit of graphics. Just to break up the monotony. Now put a little bit of backside wheel in this thing. A little more depth. That's a critical part right there. That little mistake or a little element right there tells me whether I'm in 1-point perspective. That gives me a little bit of depth in the whole process right there. Come back in and do the same thing up front. It's right here. Do the same thing. A little bit of tone in there. That gives me the absolute depth. And a little more detail in this guy. Again, a little bit more graphics in the wheels. Just really quick. Getting a theme down. Looking at a stance and then laying down the ground line. Just come back into a real strong base. That shadow to work. Notice staying right outside the lines, being extremely fluid with this stuff. There I am right there. 3 studies right there, guys. I hope begin to put some of this stuff in action for you. So let me take a moment and sharpen the stick. There's phase 1. Let's go back to this initial sketch here again. Notice for Chip's Minute, this is where we started again. This is an empathy study, and I don't think I spent enough time with this stuff. I'll always go back to this as a base, looking for themes or ideas. It's extremely interesting how that empathy means you're not really thinking about the vehicle. It's a very emotional feel, but there are certain characters about what you see and what you want to transfer into a drawing. So I did that first, and I went down and transferred some of the character again. This bustle back, which is here. The upper, which is here, opening that up. Then that little shingle right here, bringing that forward into the actual design itself. So that became very, very paramount to start there, begin to develop the shape, and then as we said here, this first 3 passes, just looking at elevation sketches based on those themes. Well, how are we getting there? What is it beginning to look like? How do we kind of feel this thing out a little bit? Let's go a little bit further with this thing now. Let's kind of walk around it just a touch. Let's go here. Let's get this guy set. Let's lay down the ground line again. Always start from the ground up. Let's put the wheelbase in place. Let's open this guy up just a bit. Notice, see I'm holding my pencil back here. Holding that back here so I can kind of search through some of the shapes I'm going to be working with here. So there's a rear wheel here. Let's lay that first bone line in place. Let's get that up and running. Let's get that collapse up front. Take that line through. Run that back in. Run that through. Take it right through the shape. Open that up a little bit more. Go back and get the upper in place. Let's run that right back in there. Man, just all of a sudden, look at that. Let's take this line, bring that through. Just drop it in. Again, return it. Let's drop that in and return it. Again, pillar and the body side. I mean, look how quickly that came together. It's a real light study, but man, look how fast that came together. I mean, again, that's the help part of having a really good theme to work with here. Let's kind of put a little more perspective in this guy. Sorry, gonna get this to square away here. There's a backside tire right there. Let's kind of really put some line weight in this thing now. Draw through it. Let's get a little bit of center line in place here. Gonna put a spoke pattern in place. Just kind of add a little bit of character to it. Same thing in the rear. Let's open that wheel up just a bit more. That little shoulder is going to give me a lamping graphic. That's going to look like this. I'm going to come back in here and just pick up a little bit of that. Again, a little bit of highlight and just break it into that far side. And just a touch of it on that. That's all we'll see. Right over there, it's just that much. Go back to the base again. Let's kind of put that spoke through it. You know, center line. Let's get this line in place here. Let's kind of kick this into place. Let's run that through. Again, another little accent. Bring it back and carry that on. Now, in this case, we won't see that front end chisel at all. It's a little bit different. I'm getting a Batmobile. Very Cadillac. Yeah, it is. That's what we're looking at for the CTS brand identity for doing a shooting brake series here. So let's kind of put this in place. A little bit of tone on the side of the pencil. Get that shape to run through. Let's get this in line. bit of glass, just real loose. A bit of rear view mirror action here. Reflect it back in the glass itself. And the backup light. There you go, gang. Real quick little empathy study. Look at that. Very, very ethereal. But again, hopefully it has enough information to get the job done here. So let's go back in just for a minute here and just play up on some of the strengths of this guy. Some weights in here. That pillar exists. Really nice, just to plant that guy. There you go, guys. There it is from the rear three-quarter. Interesting. Just a really chisel. Notice I really took advantage of the in this view. Really took advantage of the bustle back that's happening in the early Gurney Nutting series of the Rolls Royce. Very different flavor altogether. Let's go back, and pardon me as I sharpen the stick. Is this making some sense for you all? Is this helping to see how to develop a real good empathic sketch and not to be caught up in a lot of vanilla or over fluff? Just kind of roll through it and have some fun with this thing. Hope this is making sense for you, gang. This is a lot of fun. Let's go back in again. Again, start a ground line. Get that thing established. Put the wheels in place. Get that wheel plant set. And come back in. Bustle back. Look, now I've got the rhythm started here. Look where those lines are going. I'm not concerned about a lot of perfecting. So yeah, it's good. Hey, thanks, Chip. Let's kind of just roll through this thing. Notice back into this. I'm not going to see an awful lot up front there, so I'm just going to keep that real nice and loose. Bring this back into place here. Run that through. Get a drive line. Notice, I'm going to stop there for a minute. I'll use when I do a lot of sketches, for example, if this will help you at all, gang. Really interesting how I'll use a reference point, take it back in perspective to get my widths right instead of just guessing at it. These lines are done for a reason. Let's go back in here and just kind of pick this thing up into the upper, into that, into that. Whoa. Now, there you go. Now, that's got a gesture already started. I'm home. It's the operator. I'm imagining a Koenigsegg rig air stars. Yeah, that's right. Side mirrors. You got it. So let's go back in through here. Let's get this down. Let's run that line through. Connect the dots. A little bit of lighting. There it is, number 2. What do you think, guys? Again, notice again, I'm going to stop here just for a moment. I just really want you to notice how very, very empathic this stuff is. I mean, there's a lot of emotion in these sketches. I hope I'm getting that point across. A good sketch to me, should have a lot of character, a lot of emotion, a lot of imagination to kind of read into the thing, so you can move into this thing and start to see, oh, I see what you're getting at. That's kind of cool. Rather than being so predictable, I think that's one of the problems with some of the formal sketches that we do. For example, they get so formal, and there's no interaction, so to speak. You can't read into it and so forth, so it becomes very static in a hurry. So let's kind of do this. Pardon me for sharpening the stick here, guys, quite a bit. Let's go back in and put this thing into a little bit of a perspective, see what the front end starts to look like. Just kind of explore some things here. Again, ground line, just setting up my frame here. Into wheel. Into wheel. And again, that front fender set, going right straight back with that guy, come off of that with that, and then drop that beauty back in there across the cowl, get my width down, and in that back end area, into that form. Now let's do this. Now notice, look how quickly that came together just by using that frame of reference, by getting the wheels down first, and then putting this down as an orientation for the perspective itself. Let's come back in through here, down through the center line, run that through. Let's do this. Got to rough in some really, really quick front-end graphics here. Let's roll that in. Let's roll this in. Let's get this down. Let's go back into the hood, back out again, into the hood, back out again, into the fender, into the fender. Let's run that line right through there and get this guy to come back in here and do the following for us. Draw through it. Find out where that spike line is. Come back in through here. Get that leading edge in through here. There it is. Just kind of spike that in. Get that pillar in place. There's a little theme study right there, front 3/4. Hey, how you doing there? So who's on board here now? Sergeant, how you doing, Sergeant? Good. Hey, thank you very much for joining us here. We're just doing some little thumbnail studies here and some theme sketches for a shooting break series. And I'm just kind of wrapping up some little studies here based on what we're looking at. Just kind of break a little bit of this and just kind of clean up just a little bit here. There it is. Yeah, and there it is. That's page number 2. Some really fast little studies here on what the whole thing is going to look like here. Who do we have? Somebody on board here. Hey, Horton, how are you? Love the personality in this beauty. Yeah, nice to have you on board, Horton. How have you been? Doing well? Very good. Sergeant, I've got Sergeant on board. Chip, how you doing? Angry face. Yeah, a little bit more of an aggressive piece here. But let me go back just for those of you who might be coming in later and to spend a moment. Let's go back. And I started here with a little stream, for example, on what that empathic looked like in terms of trying to put together the shooting break series. It's been good. How are you? I'm doing very well. Thank you, Horton. Thank you. But I wanted to take a look at today just a series of real rapid, fast sketches. And again, I want to take a moment here to thank all of you who were involved in my stream on Wednesday when we did the F-35 Lightning. I really appreciated the fact that you joined forces with me on Wednesday. It was a lot of fun to do that aircraft piece coming off the flight deck. But then I thought, there's a lot of media there. I'm going to dedicate Friday's stream to just doing a very simple series of how to develop a rapid sketch, or what's in a good sketch. What do you look for? And being very, hopefully, forthright and analytical about what we're doing. So we start with the shooting break, and for those of you coming in late, by definition, the shooting break got its name back in the 1890s in England. The origin came from the fact that all the lords and lords of the manor, for example, had hunting clubs and so forth. So they had horse-drawn carriages that would transport the hunters and the shooting gear and all the game, etc., to the hunting site. That became the name of the shooting break. It was a shooting break. The break came from the fact that that wagon was used to train the horses or break the horses in. So shooting break down through the generations. In England, got its start in the 1890s. Today we know them as either a shooting break or an arrow wagon. But I thought the history was interesting. And I started the stream today with going back into that, just an empathy sketch to get a character down for a shooting break. And looking at, for example, the bustle back of the Rolls-Royce era, this strong design line here, but opening the piece and opening it up a little bit, and then taking the shingle effect from Rolls-Royce again, and protruding the front end out. And notice the first pass of sketches I did were all geared on that same thing and that same theme: bustle back area, shingle effect, and a real strong design line coming back in from the upper. So that was it. Same with this one. Same with this one. We just finished this one up, going from the side here, looking for a good elevation, for example, and going back in and doing some just neat little theme sketches on what that might look like from the rear 3/4, again, a front end study here. So that kind of brings you up to speed there, Horton and Sarge. Everybody else is coming on board here. And again, can't thank you enough for taking the time to be with me today. And while I've got the chance of thanking you all, I really can't express my gratitude to all of you sincerely enough for the fact that you're following me. I really appreciate that. And boy, it means a lot to me that you come in on Friday and listen to this old guy crank on some drawing work and the like. But I really appreciate you taking the time. And if I could add something to that, if you have friends who are interested in learning how to draw or pick up some little tips here and there along the way, please feel free to pass along my name, Dr. Contrast. I'd love to have them join us on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and pass the word along. So I much appreciate it there, folks. So there's page number 2. Let's go back down the line here. And let's kind of bring the scale up a little bit, get into this whole thing about what the shooting break is doing. Let's go a little bit larger and kind of wrap things in. Again, that same theme. Hey, Captain Nemo, how are you? Good to see you, Chief. Did you get a chance to see that, dude? You're my Bob Ross. After a long week, I need some. You're more than welcome there, operator. That's great. Nemo, I'll bring up the speed here. Have you picked up on anything we've been going thus far? Hey, super. Finally a weekend. Yeah, boy, you got that right. See, the Pixel Bob. Hey, Sergeant, good to see you. Let's go back and just kind of wrap some things up. I'll go back into a really good review. Let's go back and get the wheel set again. And again, we're looking for a shooting brake. Just really interesting themes. So let's go back and get the wheel set. Lay those in. Get the wheel plant down. Get the ground line set. Come back and pick that beauty up. There she is there. Let's get that fender line in place. Take it right back. Take that back. Right across the cowl. Let's get some contact points across this sketch and kind of begin to use that as a theme. Just laying in a real rough setup here to kind of get this thing started. So let's come back in again. Let's get this body line down. Let's end it here. Let's take this theme and kind of break it a little bit. Run that into place. Get that far side fender peak in place. Now we're going to drop the shingle a little bit. We're going to come back through the center line here. Let's pick up that center line. There it is there. There's my brake area in the back. This time we're going to, there's my daylight opening, and then there's that pillar comes rolling in. It's glass. But now the pillar, we're going back to the old aircraft rollover pillars back in the 50s. Where we actually roll that pillar back on itself. So it's much more wrapped glass. So it kind of changes the character of the vehicle up front there. So let's go back a little further. Let's kind of get this guy. Let's go right down the center line. But in this time, let's drop that shingle. A little bit of a break in it. Let's get that front end in place. Real loose. Just to build it in. Let's bring that line up. Bring that into play, and let's get that all set. Now let's kind of repeat this on that far side. Let's run that right through. Back in the fender peak. And there it is. Let's kind of roll that around, and let's terminate this thing. Comes in, rolls underneath, comes back up and picks that peak, drops that, comes back in and rolls in again on that side. So let's do this. Let's get that far side fender in place. Let's kind of run that fender through. Now, let's get that brake line in place. And we won't see much of the bustle back there, but there it is, in place. Real loose. Get that far side wheel in place. Let's plant that down. Let's get that guy started. Let's change the pace here. Let's kind of roll this in with a little bit more some of the sport avant feels on this thing. Change the character. Get the cowl to run in. Run that through. Let's get the center line of wheel in place here. Let's get the hub. Come back in and pick up this, this, and that. Same thing in the back side here. Hub through, spoke, and spoke. There's a real rough sketch right there, coming right into play here. Just roughing this whole form in to get some kind of character down. Let's kind of roll this back. Let's get this in. Let's take that. There's a real strong theme right there. That fender comes in, rolls into the cowl area, and breaks here. Come back in through here. Does the same thing on this side and comes back up and joins us. Lamp brake, intake, intake. Make sure we get that little bit of that bustle back. That little accent right back in here tells me there's a little bit of this character going on in that bustle back area there to get that form to read. There she is, gang. So let's kind of tone it a little bit here. I'm just going to put that center line in place. Pardon me as I rotate this pad here just a bit. Get that pillar to read. Get a little bit of glass horizon line in this thing. Change its character just enough. And that right through that highlight. A little bit of tone inside this form here. It's got to break that just a bit and be a real loose and empathic, gusting right through it, just to get the surfaces to break a little bit. Not a lot of energy there, just kind of cranking through it here. Let's see, Sergeant, I just realized that this is not like Discord. And my Bob Ross emoji is not working. Let's go back and get some line weights in here to find some of the shapes that we're working with. A little bit of a nostril here along the upper portion. Get that guy, do the same thing on this side. Bring that cowl right through, and that's that little break on the actual beak itself. Take that on through. A bit of tone here and there. Get that real strong line. I just want to pick up some real good character lines here on what this guy is doing. Let's take that right into that place. That comes down and right into that place. A little bit of the far side wheel just to kind of tone it and give us a little bit of perception of depth where we are. Run it across, run it through. Up this in. Line weight. And more punch in here. Bit of lighting, a bit of sharpness stick here, guys. Oop, pardon me. And more guts in this guy. A bit of a change of pace here. Entry warning area, and just a touch of where that graphics is in the tail section, right about in there. Let's run that line through. That area is going to be right there. Let's put those graphics in place. A little more indication, and then take it off the page. Have a little fun with this thing. There it shows. There's a little quick pencil sketch right there, gang, of what this video might look like from the front 3/4 here. So I hope this is making sense. There's where we started, a nice little empathy sketch, and then some of those clues, and just kind of working with them as we went through the entire process here today. And we'll just do this. We'll wrap it up with one more little elevation so you get a little hotter with this thing. Wheels down, ground line in place. Play the wheel again. Let's get that pattern set. Ground this thing first. Really put that thing in the ground. And there we are. So coming up here, again, that front end, let's take that line right through. Let's get that upper really sneaky. Slide that in. Come back and get that bustle back to work. There's that bustle right there. It comes in. Let's get this line to come up, and we're going to translate this as best we can here. Let's run that into play. Let's get that line to come back right off that pillar. Let's do this and run that right through. And so let's establish a real interesting surface right here. So that's where my lamping graphics are in that rear corner view right there. So it's going to come off of this guy and then right down the pike into that. And again, let's kind of run this in. Here's my pillar, that reverse aircraft piece. That's going to come off of there. Going to give me a little bit of this. Bit of horizon line back in the glass. Bit of shadow up front. A bit of tone, take it right through the form. That shingle reed, that little drop. Take it back just a little bit so we can see where the front end is. Backside wheel, ground line. Again, backside wheel. Into ground. Wheels. Let me stop right there. Hopefully get emotion in that sketch. I hope. That's the purpose of today's stream. I'm really convinced that when we draw, it's a reflection of how we see things and our personality. So the emotion should really be strong for all of us. Put your heart and soul into it. If you make a mistake, so what? It's just a mistake. You can correct that as you go. Fun part about this whole process, it's just neat to be able to lay down stream, go in and compose something and maybe take some chances, and what if this doesn't work, and what if that doesn't work? That's not the issue. The issue is once you begin to go through it, you begin to see it, then you develop a skill set, and all of a sudden you improve upon that as you go. So that's all part of the process, gang. Pardon me as I move along here. Let's get the shooting brake to run a little bit. There's the actual pillar. There's the wagon series itself, the brake, or the arrow wagon, run that through. Just got to get this all in place. A little bit of a door cut line. Let's do this. Come back and find where that center is, and just kind of lay in a couple of these guys, and we'll call it a day. Again, even here, going outside the lines, man, just be a Toyota. Just get out there and just kind of crank on that thing. Let it kind of spit. Emotion, emotion, emotion. The emotion of what we see here, the emotion is what puts it all into motion. That's the fun part about the process here. So let's just kind of wrap this thing up a little bit here. Let's just kind of tighten this down just a bit more here. Let's get this shadow to run here. A little bit of tone back in through here, kind of keep it all nice and easy. Got that design line to kind of come through very strongly. That pillar line there, that reverse pillar right through here on the other side. There's a little bit of center line here. Let's kind of put a little bit of reflection in that guy. A little bit deeper right in through here. There it is. You'll see that much. And through the glass. And into the glass. So there you are. There's a pretty good set of just some emotional, real quick sketches on how to put together what I refer to as doing some CTS conceptual studies for a shooting brake, or in other words, an arrow wagon. Interesting, again, the history of this whole thing as it started out at the beginning of the stream. And let's go back and let me recap for you here. And we'll wrap it up as we go here. It started out by doing this. I just came up with a very simple little empathy sketch. Again, sort of boring with the details, but I started this. I just did a little research a couple days ago. But it'd be kind of nice to go back into a stream system where you do a wagon sketch and just a nicer arrow system, but keep it more sketch related, very empathic, very emotional sketches as opposed to being quote media oriented. So I put this empathy piece down, and 3 pieces really struck me right off the bat. Was this: a bustle back from rolls, this real strong design line back here, which gave me the support of the bustle back. Took this line, lifted it a little bit, gave me the upper, so to speak, and this little chisel portion here, the shingle up front, really is a really interesting aspect of the whole process. And then this little the tear line down below to break up the graphics. From that, we translate that into this ground sketch below. Just took that same process and just kind of picked up this line, which became that line right there, the bustle back, which is in here, and then the shingle, which is right here up front. So upon that premise, we took that same pass and looked at some very quick elevation sketches about how to get that shooting brake series to run with here. Again, elevation study, that same theme throughout, and almost every one, just picking up that same piece and doing variations on the theme. I think it's important too to point out at this stage of the game, so often we get caught trying to do something different every single time. Yeah, I can understand the rationale behind that. I think it's important to be able to do that. But I also think it's important that once you find a theme, just stick to 3 basic points or 1 or 2 systems around that theme and really begin to stick to it and then modify it, just massage it, emulate it a little bit, and then allow it to kind of just transform from step to step to step, and a little lower, a little wider, a little leaner, meaner, etc. Just instead of trying to change everything, it makes a huge impact. Thanks, Chip. There is a lot of personality in the sketches. I think that's what I'm trying to get across to each one of you. Let that personality come through. Be bold and assertive. Go darks against lights. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Go in there fearlessly. And that's how we learn how to begin to make changes, how to begin to improve our breed, so to speak. So there's the first set of sketches right there. That's the first page, just looking at elevation, looking for theme studies. And we went into the second series when we did this. We kind of moved around the shape a little bit. From the rear 3/4, getting more of that bustle back, that real severe cut right back in through here. Same thing in through here, and adding some really interesting lamp graphics back here. Change the character just enough. And coming back over the front end graphic, just to kind of, what does it look like from the front? Is it as aggressive in the front end graphic? Is it as the rear? I don't know. Let's take a look at it. Let's see what happens with that sketch. And then last but not least, the third set we did was coming back in and just opening up and doing a front 3/4, taking advantage of some of these systems we've been referring to for the last hour or so in the stream. Now, I'm not happy with that layout there. I'm just trying to pick up a theme there. I'd go a little meaner with it, maybe a little more sophisticated. But I just don't think a shooting brake should be a conservative, run-of-the-mill station wagon. Its name implies a shooting brake, something that's very lithe, very simple, very nimble, very aggressive looking. So that's what we're trying to get across here in this CTS series of studies. So anybody have any questions at all about the process? Please feel free. We've got a few minutes here to kind of wrap it up with here. And again, I'm absolutely honored by the fact that you all have been kind enough to join me here today. I consider it a real privilege, and I thank you for your patience and working with me and watching me operate here. And I said before, I really mean this too, and I hope I'm not being self-serving. I would really like to have you broadcast, let people know that we're available here on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'd love to be able to build my audience and build my followership to get a real good design or art series, because I think there's a lot of missing in the design world. There's a lot of art missing in it. It's become very, and I'm not being critical of this, I'm just being very observant. It's just really interesting. I still can't wrap shooting brakes. I'll tell you in a minute here, Chip, what that really truly means. It's interesting how I don't want to be self-serving, but I really want to help people get the point across here and become, because I think the design world, as great as it is, I'm a huge fan of industrial design, but it's becoming so methodical and robotic in a sense that you're losing some of the qualities of just that human touch. And I don't mean that to be an old-fashioned statement, but there's got to be a little bit more personality put back into it. And that's why the art side of design has to be brought back. You know, the actual emotional quality of putting together a sketch, how you feel about something, laying it down on paper is absolutely paramount. So let's see, you can't wrap your head around that name, shooting break. Did my definition confuse you there, Chip, or are you okay with that? Exactly. You want to go to a car lot and see someone's sitting there. Oh, I'm fine. Yeah, it does sound funny. You've got a shooting break, but again, the break was. It's interesting. The historical reference to the term break came from. I don't remember the story behind it myself. Well, the story behind the shooting break thing, Sergeant, is this. Back in the 1890s in England, all the manors of the lords, in fact, the country of England, had shooting areas or hunting areas. They had wagons, for example, drawn by horses. Those wagons became known as shooting breaks. They were a shooting break because they took all the individuals who were hunters and put their hunting gear in it, their shooting gear, game equipment, ammunition, and they were horse-drawn, and they would take them out to the sites where they'd hunt. The other interesting thing about the brake system is brake became associated with they used the wagon, horse-drawn wagons, to train the horses to break them for further use on the farm. So down through the ages, it became known as a shooting brake, and also in our modern genre, it's still referred to as an automobile world as a shooting brake, but it's also the other term that they use now, or we do use in industry, is called the aero wagon, AEROWAGON, the aero wagon. So it becomes a faster variation of a machine on a Cooper sedan platform. I hope that helps to kind of clarify it there, folks. So let me just say this and wrapping it all up. Again, my sincere thanks to all of you for spending time with me here today. It's always a joy to be with you, and I hope you've learned some things like I have here in the last few minutes working with you all. Please take a moment and visit my website at drcontrast.com. There's some very interesting beginner series studies there. Please look at the site. We're going to be adding some things here. Taking all my Twitch programs and logging up into the website itself for people to look at before they purchase. Also adding a store where I'm starting to put all my work, for example, with Ferrari, Maserati, you name it, all the elements I've been working with over the years. I'm going to build a store with Corvette stuff, Maserati stuff, Ferrari stuff, just general illustration work that can be put up for purchase. So we're building that now as part of the aspect of the store. So once again, folks, thank you so much. Hope you have a tremendous weekend. Thank you for the time spent, and please feel free to drop me a note. If there's something I can help you with specifically from a drawing point of view, don't be afraid or don't be ashamed to please drop me a note at my email address, jim@drcontrast.com. Horton, thank you very much. Awesome. No, you are as well. I really appreciate you taking the time here for all of you. Please, to each one, my sincerest thank yous. Take care of yourself. Have a great weekend, and don't forget, please follow me and let your friends know that I'm available here on the tuner as we go day to day on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And again, all the very best. And I always close off with this, and I sincerely mean it. Never, ever, ever forget to remember to dare to be great, because you are. Thank you very much, gang. Take care. All the very best.